Okay, cool. Yeah, this is modules. I don't know if we're going to take the whole 2 hours, so I'll just preface it with that. We're only kind of teaching one use case for modules to you today. The other one doesn't make that much sense at this point. So yeah, we'll see how this goes. It might take 2 hours, it might take less. We'll see. But yeah, the idea today is we're going to define what a module is. We are going to see a use case for a module, and then we're going to have you implement a module based on a specific scenario. And yeah, the idea with modules is we want our code to be dry. We don't want to repeat ourselves. So modules are a great use case for that when we have some functionality that needs to be shared across multiple objects. Cool. So yeah, we've got some time today. So any questions that y'all had coming into this lesson that you want to bring up right away? I've got, probably have answers if anyone has questions. Let's see. If not, that's okay too, but we'll see.
Not yet.
Cool. That's fair. Yeah, and feel free to stop at any time. Like I said, I don't think that this lesson is going to take the whole time, so we got some time to really chat today if y'all have stuff that comes up. Cool. So vocabulary to think about, mixin and module. So those are kind of going to be used interchangeably today. And I want you to think of a mixin as a type of module. All right. So we have, this is the only type that we're going to talk about today is a mixin. The other type, just for your information, is a namespace. But you don't really run into that in mod 1. So it's not this isn't the best time to dive into why around that. But yeah, we've got some other kind of vocab that you all have seen before: instantiate, state behavior, and yeah. Cool. So let's take 3 minutes for this in this warm up, and I want everyone to kind of have a chance to answer these on your own. Jot down wherever you like to jot things down, and then we'll kind of talk about these 3 warm up questions here. Yeah, let's take 3 minutes.
Hey Tim, AJ here. What did you just say? I know it's been you literally just said it a few minutes ago, but namespace, what did you say about whether or not we need that?
I said that's the other use case for modules, and we're not going to talk about that today, but that's if you want to go down a rabbit hole, not during class time, be my guest, but it'll make more sense when the programs that you build are much larger than the ones that we've been building in Mod 1. All right, cool. It's been 3 minutes, so I'll take some volunteers. Anything that you know about modules already that you want to share? Anything that you're inferring based on the name of module right off the bat?
I don't feel like know a whole lot. This is Danny. Other than that they share behavior between objects. So I would imagine that a module would be something that holds information of similarness, I guess, like a mod that has info that's kind of the same.
Yep, I like it. All those words make sense to me. And I just like Googled the definition of module, which I had never done before, and it makes like kind of a lot of sense. It's like, you know, a standardized part or independent unit that you use in conjunction with kind of like a larger whole, a more complex whole, and it's just like a part of that complex whole. So if we think of it in terms of like Turing, right, like it's a 4 module, well, I guess not, I guess now it's like 5 or 6 module program, but it's each one of them is like a chunk of education, right, that is like given to you and is part of this larger education whole. Cool. So yeah, Kira, what are you thinking?
Yesterday we learned about inheritance, and so how you can have a super class with a certain method that the child classes will use. This is kind of a similar concept, but the classes don't have to like interact. So like if you need a similar method across classes, but they aren't all children parent classes, you can use a module. You can put that method in the module and then call on the module in your classes.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like where that parent-child relationship doesn't really make sense. It's not like one class is that related to another. It's just that the module allows us to share some behavior. It might not make sense to do an inheritance pattern because these classes like aren't that much alike, but it might make sense for them to share behavior. So that's where modules come in so that we can do that, and we can define the code once, define the method once, and then include it where we need it to be, include it in any class that needs that functionality. Cool. Yeah, so like just thinking of a real world example, like what behaviors might football and soccer players share, and then what might make them unique? Like what attributes would make them unique? Cool, Taya, what's up?
They both can kick a ball.
Cool, so if we were defining them, you know, if we were defining them as like a class, like football player, soccer player, like they wouldn't necessarily like, we wouldn't think of that as like a parent-child relationship, but indeed they both will have a method kick on them because those are pretty like that's a pretty vital, you know, part of being, you know, a football player or soccer player.
There's also things like celebrate or pass or practice or basic things like that.
Yeah, love it. It's all of that makes sense to me as far as like these are methods, right? These are things that each of our objects can do, but our objects aren't really like that related to each other in terms of like there's no parent-child relationship here. They're separate objects, yet they do the same things. So in programming, we want to share functionality. We want to define functionality once because, you know, you can think of us as like we're lazy. We just want to do things once. We don't want to repeat ourselves. We want things. We want a pattern in place so that we can be more efficient. Cool. Yeah, Austin, go ahead.
I just kind of had kind of the same stuff, like how many times they scored would be something they share, but the amount of points scored would be different.
Yeah, so that is a good example of their own state, right? So like they might share, you know, how many points that they each score, but that's something that's like unique to the object and unique to that specific like football player or soccer player object. So that's where we can think of like that's an attribute, and that is state that would be held on that object. So that in that case, like that we wouldn't use a module for because modules are stateless, and that's something I'm going to get into. But that's like a good example of like a unique attribute that that each of these players would have. Cool. How about instructor and student? Like anything coming up there as far as behaviors, abilities that you can think of?
I don't know if this would apply exactly, but what comes to mind is like just kidding, it does. The school that the instructor works at and the school that the student is at. No, that's an attribute.
Yeah, that's an attribute though. It's state, and they might both have the same. They might both have that same state. Like we attend this school. So yes for state, but no for behavior, right? That's like that's a specific attribute that would be defined per object.
Spoke without thinking. My bad.
No, that's okay. It's not like this is like a right or wrong kind of scenario. We're kind of talking it out. Cool. Yeah, go ahead, AJ.
Thank you. Students and teachers both learn.
Absolutely. There's a good one. That seems like it'd probably be a complex method to define. Because like if we think about like step-by-step process, that would be a lot of steps, I imagine. But indeed, we both learn. Like every time I teach a lesson, I probably learn something, and hopefully you all do as well. So yeah, that's a good example of shared behavior. Yeah, Taya, what else is coming up?
They ask questions, they say answers, they read the lesson plans.
Cool. Yeah, and all of those things like see now those functionality, like that functionality seems like it would be less complex than learn, right? Like read lesson, ask question, like all of that stuff's like pretty simple, like chunks. If we were thinking like of actually making that functionality exist in a method. So that, yeah, I like that example. Cool. All right, so I kind of told you like we're going to use these two terms individually, or we're going to use them in conjunction with each other, and they kind of mean the same thing for this lesson. So mix-ins like allow us to share behavior between any objects, and the way that we do that in Ruby is via a module. All right. So things to remember about modules. This is the things that I would write down just to like have somewhere, like as you're using them, to like a reminder as you're getting familiar with them. It's like, all right, they look like classes. They really do. They look a lot like them, but they only have methods in them. They don't have attributes, so they have no state, and they only have methods, so they only have behavior. All right. You can never do a module.new. You can't instantiate them because they are not, they don't have that ability. Like you can't have a specific instantiated module. That's just not how it works. Yeah, we'll get into the specifics on that. Cool. So yeah, let's look at this repo, and it's right here. I put it in the chat, or put it in Slack earlier, so it's there if you want to grab it from there if you haven't cloned it down already. And then also it's in the lesson plan as this repo over here. Cool. So I've got it cloned down already, and feel free to tag along with me here. Cool. Oh man, I really don't like that. This needs to go away. Great. Okay, cool. Yeah, my prompt is a little different. I spent some time on the prompt, so it's probably going to look a little different. But let's just like copy and paste from the lesson plan, one thing at a time. All right. And so the first thing, I like notice where I'm at. I'm in this Ruby module example. So I'm in the repo that we cloned down somewhere, hopefully into like your classwork directory. And I go into pry. So I'm at the root of the repo. And this is like similar to how the interaction patterns are for independent challenges. So this is like what it would look like if you ran it from the root of the repo, if you started with in pry. Cool, and let's just grab this require first to get status update, to get access here. Great, we've got it. And now let's do some things with status update. So I can save my object. Hey, I'm learning about Ruby modules today. It's no big deal, I got this. And I save that to a variable status. Cool, I can see that my object is returned. Things are looking pretty good. And if I just do this status.display method, this method's pretty cool. It like prints out, you know, the body of my status and then some cool lines to the terminal. Looks like the return value is nil. But now I can add some comments. And I'm just going to do these all at once because they're all doing a similar thing. But the idea is that we need to store these comments in a certain way to my status object. So if I do that here, great. Looks like all of them ran. I get a nil return value. And now the thing that I want y'all to try here is now if I do status.display, great. Now you can see like I have the comments listed underneath numerically that I put in with this add comment method. All right, and so great, things are looking like they're working like in a certain way. And I also have this remove comment method. And now if I do status.display, it kind of tells me like, hey, the comment with ID number 3 was removed. So that was what is a module. And now if I display again, you can see that one is removed. And we have only 1, 2, and 4 now. Cool. And I can kind of like look at my code here and see what's going on. I've got this state of body and comments. And then as I display, we run through the state of our comments and kind of like cycle through those in a specific way. Cool. So that, any questions on that? Like any questions coming up about like what I just did, about this repo in general? About like, why, maybe like, Tim, why are you doing this? This makes no sense.
So you created the class already, or the, I'm sorry, the module already, and this is just all the info from that module that we're just running in pry.
No, so not quite. So if you take a look at this repo, my class is status update. All right, and so when I ran up here, I'm not gonna be able to scroll up, it looks like. Maybe, no. Okay, so if I look at my history, cool. So when I did on line 2, status update.new, and I passed it an argument, that's referring to this class status update. And this is not something we would be able to do with a module. This is just like something we can only do with the class as far as like instantiating it and having it hold some state, which is body and comments at this point. But what we're going to do is we're going to see like in this repo here, there is also a photo class that has some very similar functionality, and that we will kind of like extract the live demo that I'm doing is to show you like how we can extract some functionality out into a module and then reuse it where we need it in each class. Yeah, haven't shown anything new yet. That is correct. Cool. So if we look back at the lesson plan, we've got this photo class now, and I can stay right where I am in pry. All I need to do to get access to the photo is require that file. I get the true, great. And now we can run through a similar process. This photo looks like it takes 2 arguments. It's kind of like the actual photo, which is a URL for somewhere on the internet. And then it also takes like maybe an initial caption, it looks like, as another argument here. And I can inspect that class over here and see that. Yep, indeed. We got an image source and a caption. So we've got some state. So great. If I instantiate it here, it looks like it worked. I have an object returned, a photo object. And now I see I can also display with this photo object. So let's see what that comes up with. Photo.display, great. I have a URL. I have some other things printed to the screen, and then I have a caption as well so far. And now if I want to add some comments, I can do that. I'm just going to take them right from the lesson plan. Great. Let's add these all in a row. Fun thing about Pry, you can do that all at once. Cool. And now if I do a photo.display, great. I've got some comments on here on this specific photo instance, and now I'm starting to see some duplication in my code, and I'm starting to see like maybe some patterns that I'd like to refactor, because duplication is generally confusing and also slows us down performance-wise. And now I want to maybe like make some adjustments so that I can so that I can have drier code and have a use case for modules. Cool. So I'm gonna put y'all into breakout rooms. This is gonna be like a quick one, like a real short one, like 5 minutes, maybe even less, just because these two turn and talk questions are not like, I don't think you'll spend more than a few minutes on them. But yeah, let's go into breakout rooms. I want you to answer the turn and talk questions. And cool. Let me just get Kat in a different room. And then, yeah, we'll come back and kind of chat about what we're gonna do.
Oh, hey, Tim, AJ here. I'm sorry, first, I realized I was not muted. And then second, I was typing in Pry. What are we doing in these breakout groups?
Yeah, so in these breakout groups, we're just gonna discuss the two questions in the lesson plan that are under turn and talk and right under this code. And the two questions, I'll post them in the channel just so you have them like easier access. I'm gonna post them under a thread of where I last posted too, so you have them there. Cool, I'm gonna open the rooms. Yeah, let's take like 4 minutes on this. Cool. All right, so I really wanted to show you this cool thing in Ruby that you've been using. You've been using modules all along. You just don't know it because it's not like super explicit. It's kind of like in the background. But if we look at this enumerable module, look at this. This is what it is. It's the module enumerable. And you can see here that all of these methods, let's find map. Cool. Like all of these methods are part of a module. Ruby, the people who created Ruby were like, we're going to have a lot of different types of collections. We're going to need to iterate on those collections. And we need to define some behavior that all of these collections can work with in a similar way, right? We can, all of these enumerables, they work on hashes. They work on ranges. They work on arrays. So this is the perfect example of a module in Ruby that deals with some kind of collection, right? And so if you built your own data structure that was a specific type of collection holder, like some kind of collection data structure, then you would want to implement this module Enumerable so that you could have access to all these iteration methods, right? And so this is a great use case and example for a module. Yeah, go ahead, Taya.
So an enumerator is a module?
So an enumerator is a type of object that is implemented with other enumerators that live in the enumerable module.
Cool. Can you say that one more time?
Certainly can. So an enumerator it's kind of like this specific type of method that they all live in the enumerable module, and they're all designed to iterate on collections.
So a really concise way is an enumerator is part of a module?
Yeah, so an enumerator object generally means that you have it means that the method that is an enumerator object is kind of it's a specific type of method that lives on enumerable and that returns an enumerator object when you call that method, which is not concise, but let me say it a different way. Let's not think about the word enumerator. I think it'll make it easier. So we can think of all the enumerables that you've learned so far are methods that are defined in the enumerable module because they are all they all do similar types of functionality, which are iterating on collections. And so we keep them all in the same place, and then we include them in places like the hash class, in places like the array class, and in places like the range class, so that each of those classes, which are not necessarily related, share related functionality.
Cool. Can I just repeat it back to you?
You can try.
my pared down version is all enumerators are methods defined in the enumerator module.
Enumerable.
Enumerable.
Module. Yep.
Cool.
Yep. So, and that's a Ruby convention. Is this UBL is kind of another one of those things where go back one. So you can see there's also this comparable module, and that's where you get all your greater than, less than, not equal, 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 all of those comparison operators. They all live in a comparable module. So now you can see there's a comparable module, there's an enumerable module, and the module that we are going to implement to stick with convention is commentable. So it's like a naming convention. Yeah. Cool. Other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Kira.
Did you say that the reason we don't see that the module has been called on is because it's called on in the array in the other classes that are just typical Ruby classes?
Exactly. So we didn't if we look at my terminal here, we didn't define the range class, right? We didn't define the array class. We got that for free by installing Ruby. So that's all part of it. But under the hood, where this stuff is defined, you will see the module syntax include enumerable, include comparable, and that stuff is included with each class. So
cool.
Yeah. Cool. Great. So let's do a module. Let's make one. So first thing we're going to do is, if I'm in my repo, Ruby module example, and I want to touch a file, it's going to be same way that we would make any Ruby file, and I'm going to call this commentable. Great, that looks like it worked. And then in commentable, what I'm going to do is I will implement this. I don't know why I tried to switch up the way I have my terminal and Adam set up. I saw Megan's the other day. I was like, ooh, I kind of want to try that. And now I'm like, I think I'm going to go back to the way I came. But the way that we would implement this is we'd use a keyword module similar to a class, all right, lowercase, we call it module. You can see it shows up in purple immediately because it's like a reserved keyword in Ruby. I'm going to call this commentable. Looks very similar to a class still. We use the capital syntax here for what the name of our class is going to be, and then we got to end it, or what the name of our module is going to be, and then we have to end it. All right, so this is all very similar. The only difference so far between class and module is this keyword module. Cool. Ruthie, I see you got your hand up.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, in looking at these, at the photo and status update classes, how do we know that modules are the way to go about drying this up as opposed to going the inheritance route where we could say like there is a superclass called post and then status update post and photo post are subclasses?
Yep, so that is like a design decision that will not ever, well, not ever, I shouldn't say, that will not be totally clear, like right up front. It is certainly a way that you can go, but usually the way that you can ask yourself, like, do I use inheritance or do I use modules, is if the inheritance pattern is the is a pattern. So it's like a photo is a post, a status update is a post. Okay, if we can say yes to both of those questions, then you can say, yes, this is like a decent pattern for inheritance. You can say a photo has a comment behavior. You can say a status update has a comment behavior, or we can say commentable behavior. Now that is where we can say like, okay, like I'm going to make the use case for using a module in this case. So it's kind of like, you'll find some examples where it's not that clear which one should I go with, but think of module as like, all right, my photo, I don't think of these both as posts. So just for this example, we'll go with this way. I don't think of a photo and a status update as a post. I think of them as separate entities that aren't going to share that much in terms of state. So I'm going to say I both want them to be commented on, but I want them to be separate entities and not follow any like pattern of parent-child inheritance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a commentable module that just allows us to add and remove comments to these things.
Okay, so it sounds like it's more of like a process of elimination, and then if neither modules nor inheritance gets eliminated, then it's however you look at it.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. So then it becomes like, which of these is more reusable down the line? Like, will I have more things that use comments, and so then I want a module, or will I have more things that are posts? And so then I probably want to use this post superclass and have it inherit. And that is like a design decision that you will have to make at some point, and like you will be told whether that is, different people will probably have different opinions on whether one is better or not, and that's just like part of it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, cool. That's a great question though, because this is like kind of the biggest question I think coming out of inheritance and modules is like, how do I know what to use? When should I use what? Think of inheritance as is a. So a fish is a animal, so it could inherit from the animal class. A human has a swim ability, a fish has a swim ability. So we could think of the swimmable module as has a relationship, and we could include swim into both of them if they swim the same way. But I guess human, you could make the animal use case. So maybe I'll think of a different one, which is like robotic underwater machine has another swim, also has a swim functionality. You could mix in that functionality. Cool. Other questions coming up before we do it?
Do you have to include an adder reader in your commentable file?
Great question. You would never include an adder reader in a module because an adder reader will always need an attribute to correspond to, and modules will never have attributes because they don't hold state. Great question. Yep. Cool. So let's follow the lesson plan. Great. The next thing that I really need to ask is what code goes in commentable, right? So like, what can I look at here and say, okay, this code belongs in my module, and I'll put my status update class back here. Yeah, Danny, go ahead.
I think all of the code, the methods def, add comment all the way down to def total comments would go inside of there.
Great. So let's try it. So you say from add comment down to total comments, those are all looking the same to you, right? So like, let's just go ahead and include them in the module and then include them in our classes and hope for the best and think that, yeah, those should work basically the same. All right. So I'll do that and we'll see what happens.
And do you leave those comments also? Okay, I was gonna just ask you, do you leave them in there? Or I just commented them out.
Yeah, I would move them over just because it's like less confusing to me then. Like it's like, you can comment them out for sure, but like in general, they are going to exist in this module commentable module, and then we're going to include them in both places. So the whole point of having the module is to just get rid of them in both places and only have them in one place.
Cool.
Cool. So let's get rid of these in status update. Awesome. And let's go back into pry. Cool. Actually, I didn't do anything. I never included it. So another like convention thing, generally we'll include modules right here at the top of the class. All right, so it's like very clear right when I get to this class, top to bottom, like here's what's included, you get this functionality. So I will include commentable up here, and this is it. So now every instance of photo will have access to all of these methods. And just to be clear, when I use the include syntax, these are instance methods. So I need an instance before I can call the method. All right, so I'm going to kind of show that in the way that I do this. And I want to show it to you wrong the first way because that's generally how it goes in programming. All right, so I go to pry. What do I need? I need a photo. So I think I have one all the way back here. Yeah, let's do a photo because we included commentable in photo. I haven't included it in status update yet, so let's just focus on photo. So I've got this photo. Great. Not what I was hoping for. Uninitialized constant photo. Okay, so this is probably going to happen. I know what I did. Does anyone else know what I didn't do yet?
Either do a require.
Cool, exactly. So first thing I need to do, it's a new pry session. So I need to require my file. Otherwise, pry's like, cool. And when I do that, look what I get. Uninitialized constant photo : commentable. Did you mean comparable? So it's already telling me like a module it knows about. I also need to require my file for the module inside my class file. So the reason I show this wrong is because generally how it goes in like lessons, I'll do something, I'll brush right over it, and all of a sudden you'll get an error on your end, like, oh, Like, why is this not working? And totally get it. So what I need to do here is I need to require this, and I need to look and see how my tree structure looks, because that's like kind of what makes require work a certain way. And I'll go up here, top of my file, and I will require ./commentable. Great. I need to use it. I need to go to a new pry session though, because pry is the state of my program when I started pry. Anytime I make changes, I got to I got to run the program again, basically. So I go into pry now, see if I can require photo. Ooh, this time it works because it requires it. It loads this whole class and says, yep, everything's good because I know about commentable now. So I can do this. All right, great. Let's see if I can do all of the things I want to do with a photo. So I have a photo object, and the first thing I want to do is call photo.display. Now this is, I'm just checking to make sure that it looks the way I expect. Okay, great. It's got this URL, it's got this caption, cool. And now when I call add comment, that's my first one, right? I need to call it on my photo class, and I need to pass it an argument. So let's do that, photo.addComment, and this is going to be hello, great photo. And let's close that. Cool. Looks like things ran okay. And indeed, I can check my display, and great. I have this comment, and it works exactly how I expect. Now, the interesting thing here to remember is like this will not work unless on the state of my object. So I'm running, remember, methods run on objects. Now, just because these methods live over in commentable doesn't mean they run on commentable. They still run on my photo object, right? I'm still calling this method add comment on my photo object. All right, so something to remember. And this comments is kind of like undefined within the module, right? But once I bring in the module commentable into my photo, now I have access to the method comments, which is an adder reader on my photo class. So I'm referencing the state of my specific photo class within a method in my module. All right, so the module doesn't hold state, but because the object that I'm calling this method on, add comment, is a photo object and does have state, I can reference the state of that class. That was a lot of words. Do we have a lot of questions?
Just could you repeat it?
Yep.
I'm really sorry.
Yep, totally. So I am running the add comment method on a photo object. If I look at my photo, it's an object, it's a photo object that I instantiated, right? When I run add comment, when I run this, I'm running my method add comment on my photo object. Methods run on objects. However, my add comment method is defined in the commentable module, and it references state that is on my photo object, but it itself does not have state. The module doesn't have any state. My photo has state within it, and because I'm running this method on my photo object, I can reference state that lives on my photo object, even within a method that lives in my module. All right, and that is the first line here, comments. Let me put a pry here. I don't have shortcuts on this computer. Cool, and just show you what this looks like. So first I gotta get out of pry one more time, get back in, get a photo instantiated. Great. And run a method on that photo. Great. What happened here? Uninitialized constant photo.
I
Did
think
I
because your pry is in your commentable,
Yep.
you can't access it in the photo because that's the point you were trying to make.
Yeah, so I was thinking I could, but I haven't tried this, so certainly possible that I am totally wrong. But I think I got an error before that. So I think I got an error here. Yeah, uninitialized constant photo. Oh, I didn't require my file. You gotta remember to require your files. Why can't I remember? Cool. True. All right, now we should be able to get a photo object. And this is the key here, reading my error messages, right? Like I didn't expect that, but I looked and said, I think I got this name error, uninitialized constant photo. Then I got another error, but like I needed to go back up and read my first error to get to where I was. Cool, so now I instantiate a photo. Great, that works as expected. Oh, yeah. Okay. And let's just make sure we've got it. I can't type today. All right, great. So I've got a photo object. Now let's do a photo.add comment. I think I should be able to hit this pry. What am I saying? Say something. Great. So I can get into this pry. All right. And if I look at self, I am indeed a photo object. I am not a module object. All right. I am a photo object because methods run on objects. And this method, add comment, is included in the photo class via the commentable, but it still runs on photo objects. So to hit my pry, I need to actually put my pry in the module because that's where the method is defined, but where what it is running on is a photo object. And so I have the photo object states because when I run the add comment method, the object I run it on is a photo. So I am referring, when I refer to state, I'm referring to that object state.
So for like the methods, it bounces over to the module file, but it pulls the state from the instance variables in the class file.
Yes, it pulls the state from the type of object that you call the method on, right? So I can also, if we include this now in status update, so I've got status update, all I need to do here, I need to include commentable, right? And let's get out of pry.
You probably need to require it as well.
Dang it, I was hoping you'd let me make my own mistakes. I just wanted you all to see this mistake one more time because I know you're gonna make it.
I just have to speak when I know something.
I feel you on that. No, totally. I totally get it. I'm still gonna make this mistake just so you can see what it looks like. So when I do pry, I require, what is this called? Status update /status update. Great. And I get uninitialized constant, status update commentable. So if you start seeing this, where you see an uninitialized constant, where in your class, what the module that you defined, remember, got to require the file in the top of your class file. All right. Cool. So I'm going to do that, and I'll just take it from here. All right, and we'll restart. Cool. Require status update, that works. And now I should be able to, I'm just gonna draw from the lesson for this part. Get this status. I'm probably gonna skip the displaying, but I'm gonna add these two comments. Actually, let's just add one. I hit my pry. Let's look where I'm at. I'm still in this add comment method, but now self is a status update object. Because I ran this method on a status update, depending on which object I run it on will depend on what I am at that current moment. But the reason this works is because the state of comments, the attribute of comments with the atter reader of comments is defined on both status update and on photo. So these are different states when I reference them. And the two separate pry examples that I've shown, they're different states and they are different objects, but I wanted to show you this and be explicitly clear. Like the way you hit the pry is you put it where you defined the method, but depending on what object you call that method on will depend on what the state looks like at the time that you hit the pry. All right, it's break time. Let's take 5 and come back at 20, let's do 2:09.
Alex, if you're still on, I want to hear this bear story.
I think
Well,
it,
here, wait, I actually, Sienna, if you go in our just chatting, I posted the video in there and it's like this huge bear and they're in Italy and there's this little kid and it's like right behind the kid and the dad's just like telling him to like calmly like walk down and the kid's just like calmly walking and the bear's just like calm.
You resume this. All right, so I want to get back to where we were, which is we are in pry, right? We're just trying some of this stuff out. We have, hide this. We have our commentable module, and what we did is extract 4 comments, or 4 methods, I should say, that all have to deal with comments. And we extracted it into a module commentable. We have access to that module. Now I need to get my pry out though, so this actually works to reset the state. Cool. So let's go back into pry and let's require both of these. Actually, just grab them from the lesson because that's quicker. Cool. So we'll require both of our files. And if they both require correctly, that's a good sign. That means that we've also included our module correctly and required the module file correctly. So now as I run some methods on status, which I'll just run them all to see if they work. All right, grab. Man, this trackpad is slick. All right, I think I've got it. Okay, this is a cool thing you can do in pry. You can just like copy and paste everything in as long as there's no like return values that'll screw it up. Cool. Great. So looks like all of this code ran and all I did was just copy and paste it. I had a status object, status update object, right? I displayed, now I can run add comment on it. I can still run remove comment. I can feed it the ID. These methods are working the exact same. I've just avoided duplication. I've included my module in both of these classes, and because these methods are exactly the same, like I can use them the same way in each class. All right, but they run on different objects. You can see they run on status here all the way through. They run on photo objects as well. Photo.display, photo.add comment, and it's all of these comment methods that I'm actually running. So we can see I've got remove comment and add comment. Let's see if next comment ID will run. These two both don't take arguments. So I've got my photo object, cool. Let's see what this runs. Great, next comment ID looks like it's working properly. Okay, if I look at my photo.comments, indeed, that looks like it works properly because the next ID from 1 would be 2. Cool, that makes sense to me. And then let's see total comments. Great, That also works the way that I would expect. Same thing with status update now. What is, oh, it's just called status. Status.comments. I can see, okay, I've got 1. So if I run status.next comment ID, I expect 3 here. That one looks like it's working properly. If I run status.total comments, I expect 1. Cool, that one looks like it's working properly. So now I've extracted 4 methods that did live in the same 2 classes. Now they both live in that module. Questions on any of it? Yep, go ahead, Ruthie.
So not exactly about this example, but modules in general.
Yep.
I was wondering if we could, if there's like a specific difference that we should know about mix-ins versus modules. I know mix-ins are a type of module or something. People were dropping notes in the chat about it and it still like hasn't, I'm still not super clear on it.
Yep, so mix-in is like a type of module, and it's a way that we mix in some sort of functionality or behavior. So it's like we're mixing in the commentable module into the status update class. All right, so we're mixing in all of the functionality that lives in the module commentable when we say include commentable. That's like, that is the action of mixing in all of this functionality that's defined over here.
Gotcha. So I'm a little confused, I guess, then about the keyword module on line 2.
Yep.
Is there a context in which that would be mix-in instead?
In a different language.
Okay.
Yeah, in a different language, you might define it as like an actual mix-in, like a different programming language. So mix-in is kind of like this more general programming term that's just like, hey, this is what we use to mix in certain functionality.
Okay. So are there other, I mean, I know you said something about the namespace thing and that we don't need to know about that now. Is there anything that we should know about differentiating module from mix-in in order to like keep our understanding up to par, I guess?
I would think of modules as mixing in functionality at this point, and just know that there's like a separate use case that you will run into later on called namespaces, and like that's
okay.
Yeah. And so you can think of like the module serves 2 purposes: namespacing and mixing in, and like this is how you mix in, which is the use case that you will use in mod 1.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Tim, for this exercise, we used commentable. Is there a, like I know reading earlier that it usually ends with a able.
Yep.
So does that leave it open to anything that ends with an able, or is there a best practice when naming stuff?
Yeah, I mean, best practice is to use the able, because that's like your way of signifying to other Ruby developers that this is a module. And so when you like refer to it like, oh, when you say commentable, like it's kind of like this like trigger where now other Ruby developers will like immediately assume that that's a module, because now they know that that is the convention. However, like I can change this to commenting and do it over here, and this is going to work just fine still. Where's my huge copy paste thing? I think this is it. I didn't require. I never require.
Tim, is there like this thing that keeps happening where we're using pry to look at what we're doing, we have to keep remembering to require anything? Is there a reason why we don't just use like a practice file in the editor so we don't have to deal with this?
There isn't. This is just like a different way of kind of like showing you how to like try stuff out.
Okay.
There's not like a like yeah, you could put all this in a runner, right, and then just run that file. But yeah, I'm just.
Because I would completely lose track of what I've required and what I haven't, and like that's just like seems
Totally.
like a unnecessary burden.
Yeah, and like, yeah, as you're saying that, I'm like, yeah, it seems like it is kind of unnecessary, but here we are doing it. So, yeah, I would say like it's just another way that like you can jump into Ruby code and do what you want. But like a runner file for all of this functionality is totally valid and how we've shown it to you most of the time. But you can see all of this like still works. All of these work now as the module named commenting. So it's just, it is not a rule, it is a convention on this.
I have a question, Tim. AJ here.
Cool.
And this is going off of what Danny asked about convention in your answer to signal to other developers. So part of like what I'm learning about like how we're writing software for other developers is including say documentation and TDD. Like these classes don't have TDD. They're just kind of written, but I see that let's theoretically say that like we did create a photo class with test and the status update with class with test. If the functionality of the commentable, like whatever methods get extracted out into a module, what happens to the tests?
So you'd need to test each method of the module in every class it's included in. So like you would have an add comment, remove comment, next comment ID, total comments test for both your photo test and your status update test.
So it wouldn't be a separate test file for the module itself. It's just how it's accessible through the classes that it's mixed into.
Exactly. And the reason for that is because if we tried to just test a module in isolation, it wouldn't work because a module has no state and a module can't be instantiated. So we can't, there's no other way to test it except included in a specific object.
Okay, so following best practices, it's like create your classes, create your tests to follow the TDD so you know that all those methods are working, and that's where you can go if they break. And then this commentable or module be kind of like a refactoring phase of such.
Exactly. Like in an ideal world, in a best case scenario, say like in the project, you've already written the tests for some of these methods that you have, and now you're just realizing, oh, this method does pretty much the same thing as this other method, or oh, if I extract this little piece of code out of this class and this class and this class and make a method for it and then include my module that has that method, like great, like now I have all of that, now I have all that functionality, and now I've eliminated a few lines of code because my method is defined one place instead of like, you know, 3, say.
In your test files, would you need to require the module file, or would it get that from the class files?
It gets it from the class file. So that's like kind of like how you see like when I'm only requiring up here, I'm requiring my class files, right? And because the module is required in those files, I get that all for free when I require my class file because it's kind of like, it's part of that constant. So it's mixed in there. Yep. All good questions there.
Let's say we had like just one method in our module that was applied to 2 class files.
Yep.
Would we be required to write a test for each one of those module, like that method in each class file?
Yes.
Test file?
Yes, because you want to make sure that when this method that's in a module runs on a specific object, it runs the way you expect for that specific object.
Okay.
Yep. Cool.
One more question.
That's all right. Go ahead. Yeah.
Is there somebody else that wanted? Okay.
I'll go after you.
Okay. Thanks. So this is off of Sienna's question where hypothetically we have one method in a module. I just want to make sure my understanding is complete. If there are any amount of methods in the module, like 100 of them for some reason, we'd have to have tests for all 100 of them?
You only have to have tests for the ones that you're using. So like if you're using, if you have 100 methods in a module, right? But this object that you included on only uses 3, then you use those 3 that you know are being called. But if you have a module with 100 methods, there's probably a use case to like split that up into multiple modules, right? Like this one that only has 3 methods. Maybe we include that one with our specific class that only uses 3, but then we would have like separate modules that we can also include if we need them or if we don't. Like it's kind of like it's up to you to say like this module commentable, all these methods deal with comments, they all belong there. I might not use them for every object, but this is probably where they'd belong. And then you might also decide down the road, I want a commentable and then I want a remove commentable, because I have all this like remove functionality that now kind of like I decided should be chunked up together, and I should have 2 modules. So that kind of brings me to these like key points. It's like you can include the same module in many classes, and a class can include many modules. All right, so there's not like this like limitation like there is in inheritance. All right, other questions? I think we had another one.
I've got a question. So I know in the inheritance lesson, it was talking about how we should start by writing out the duplicative code at first and then refactor afterward. Is this the same idea here, where we should start writing everything out and then figure out what can be condensed and dried up?
Yeah, I think it's like if you notice the pattern right away, like I don't want to discourage you from being like, oh, I already wrote this method. Oh shoot, like I should probably like, this is like my module light bulb's going off. Let me create the module. I don't want to discourage you from that, but like it's generally the pattern is better if you have the test. Like, right, like if we're using TDD, we have the test, we write the method, and then like, oh, I've noticed now that I've written a very similar method or maybe the same method somewhere else. Let me just extract that into a module now and let me run the test again. And if all is well and you've done the refactor correctly and required the files correctly and included them correctly, then your test should run the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then in terms of file naming, I understand that we called this module commentable and the file is called commentable, but that makes it sound like it's a class of its own. Is there some sort of, like, would we not call it commentable underscore module.rb? Is that not a thing?
No, yeah, so the convention is not to use, like, not to put module in the name, similarly to like how we wouldn't put class in our file name, but the way that you organize like the code, like you might have like a modules like folder that you could put your modules in if you wanted, or generally you'll know that it's a module because of the UBL, and that's like where convention kind of like is helpful. It's like you use the UBL naming so that you can recognize that it's a module.
Okay. That makes sense, making a folder for modules, considering that you might have more than one. Okay.
Yep, and there'll be like places in Rails where like there's convention in Rails, like once you get into mod 2 of like, hey, this is where we put modules and like here's why, so that everyone knows where they are. But like here in like plain old Ruby, there's like a little bit less convention around that. Cool. All right, so I think we'll probably take our last break, and then for the rest of the time we'll put you back into breakout rooms and you can kind of have at this exercise. Cool, so let's come back at 32 and be ready to go into breakout rooms then.
Here, quick question before everybody goes. This next exercise, is it going to be in the same repo?
It's not. So like you can create these files in the same repo, but the exercise is within the lesson plan. So you'll just like create these two classes, yeah, and then you'll create, then you'll kind of like follow the directions here.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yep.
Tim, did you see the launch was postponed?
I didn't know for
Yeah,
weather.
they're gonna try again in 3 days. Yeah, weather.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, Tim, who schedules a launch at 4:30 in the afternoon in Florida in the summer? Everybody knows it rains every day.
All right, let me start up this recording and share. All right, so let's talk about what we've learned and how that went. I kind of want to discuss the summary questions, but if anything like came up while you were in that breakout room that you want to ask about, then feel free to start.
This is AJ here. I was in a breakout room with James, and we did the engine part. We didn't do the air conditionable part because we started experimenting to see what would happen if, or I guess how to implement like the drive method in the engine module. Because I think like we also like I'm pretty sure start and stop go into the engine method. They're like line by line, character by character, the exact same thing, but then drive is not. And we figured that it could go into the engine module, but then its implementation would have to depend on these classes, Camry or Jeep. They would have to have some attributes, and they would have to know about their own state.
I love it.
We could do that.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense because you could use that method in both, but now you need some kind of conditional that relies on state, right? And says like, let's check the state of the object that this method's being run on and see if the state says two-wheel or front-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive, right? And so that's like a way that you could, I love that y'all were thinking about that and thinking about like refactoring it in that way. But then, yeah, like you said, you got to have a conditional that basically references state, and then that state needs to be defined in a similar way, right? Like that attribute probably needs to be defined with the same name on each of those classes so that you can then reference it the same way in that method.
Is the point when you decide that you are adding too many conditionals to make something work from a module, like, is that just experience?
I think like I wouldn't do more than like probably 2 conditionals like in the same method to get some method to work in like multiple classes and be defined on a module. Like I would say, yeah. I don't know if experience is the right word, but like readability, right? Look at it, say, what is my trade-off here for maybe like getting this to work this way? Is it more or less readable? If it's more readable, then great, keep it. If it's less, then probably just go back to the way that it was where you're not using it. But yeah, I think that's a good question. Yeah, all right, so does anyone have anything for this first summary question? Like, why do we separate out the module that has like the engine functionality and the AC functionality? Like any benefits that you can think of there?
Not all vehicles have AC.
Yeah, exactly, right? And then not all vehicles have, like you have the ability now by separating out those 2 modules to make decisions down the road that either allow AC or don't. And you're not kind of like, you're not basically saying all of my vehicles are going to look this one way and either have all these methods or not. It's like, nope, I'm going to like structure this in a way because I can, that's organized, that's concise, and that like kind of follows this like SRP, right? Like single responsibility principle, like 4 modules in this case of like, what does this module's behavior look like? What should it include? And does every like car that I make need this functionality, or can I kind of separate it out?
Is it also that we want to keep like our modules somewhat clean as well, like not so inundated with a whole bunch of things as well, or
Yes.
is that irrelevant?
No, it's totally relevant. You want that thing to be clean. You want it to, like when I look at the enumerable module, I expect to have a bunch of methods that can perform iteration in a specific way, right? Like enumerable is probably the largest module you're going to see, but like all of those methods work on collections, and they all perform some sort of iteration in like the same way on each collection. So that is what I expect, and that is where all those should live. Similarly, like comparable, like these are all ways that I am like getting a less than, greater than, equal to, or not equal to, right? And those things are those things make sense together, right? And only like, I don't want to add anything to comparable probably ever, because like I can't think of other scenarios for comparisons. It's like less than, greater than, equal, or not equal. Like I honestly can't think of other ones. So it's like that. I'll probably never add to that module. I'll probably just make a new module for other functionality that I need. Cool. So tell me in your own words, what is a module? How's it different than a class? I'd love a hand, a virtual hand. Cool, Taya.
Cool. Module and a class has a state and you can instantiate objects of that class. A module doesn't hold a state, it only has methods and it's used to act upon a class.
Love it. Love that definition. Anyone want to add anything to it? How you're thinking of it that might be helpful? Great. I thought Taya had a really good answer too. Okay, cool. Yeah, Gabby, go ahead.
I have a question.
Yep.
Is there a situation in which you would want to, and is it possible to define a class method in a module? Or like yeah.
I love that you asked. I have not shown you how to do this, but yes, it is possible. The only thing I'll tell you is you use different syntax to mix in those methods, and you extend when you're dealing with giving the class access to class methods that are defined in a module. And here at the bottom of the lesson, we've got a couple of like follow-up pieces. And the reason I didn't show you how to use extend is because this is like, I'm extending the learning outward to you all to go and find out.
Very cute. Thanks.
If the words match up, I use them in a very corny way, if I can.
Tim, this is Taya. Is there a reason that you would use a module for like the engine instead of having Jeep and Camry be child classes of a vehicle class?
Both patterns are something I would say is acceptable, and it is up to you to decide which one is better for your program. Yep. And don't be afraid to make the wrong choice. Like, right, especially with this project, don't be afraid to like make the choice for a module when it ends up being a better use case for inheritance, and vice versa. Make a choice, live with that choice. It might be the best choice, it might be the wrong choice, but like you will learn either way, and you will learn more from making a choice rather than shying away from making some choice.
I want to ask a question that I'll ask it in the context of Black Thursday. Is there a good case to extract querying methods from a class into a module for different types of collections? Or does that get obscenely complicated and I shouldn't even go down that path?
I think if the methods that you're running look like extremely similar, and the only thing that's different is what you've named, like say the class method that holds the collection, then yeah, I think that's a great use case. And like there's a way to like go figure out how to get that, how to name things in a way that it works for all of your classes, and that method can be extracted. So yeah, I would say like I don't want to discourage you from doing that. All right, it's 3. We took 2 hours. I can't believe I thought we would not take 2 hours.
We have stellar questions.
Yeah, no, you really do. I appreciate all the engagement in the questions. Keep them coming as they come up, like in the project, in you know, the ways that you're experimenting with these things, and post them in your channel. And yeah, I like it, and I'll be happy to answer them as long as y'all take a shot at answering them first. Cool. All right, with that, I will say goodbye.